Coming up on this episode, me and Dave stumble our way through talking about turning 30. One of us about to approach that milestone, one of us being through it. Guess which is which? Oh, bugger. But anyway, let's get into it. What's going on, beautiful people? This is the Perspective Chasing Podcast, and I'm your host, John.
And I'm your co-host, Dave. And today, we're going to be talking about turning 30.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Some of us are already there.
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
It's not that bad, Treek, we'd be fine.
See, this is what I was thinking about. So for a bit of clarification, I'm about to turn 30 in a couple of weeks. And supposedly each decade is a massive milestone, or so they say. But is it really? I'm approaching it, you've been through it. Is the grass greener on the other side of the fence, or is it as dry and as dismal as they say?
It's greener. Tell you one thing, it's the big thing. Before I turned 30, everyone gave me the whole speech, right? Ooh, 30. Ooh, 30. It's either 30, 30, or ooh, 30. None of those sound good, right? So there's a split second where you're like, oh God, I'm turning 30. I'm getting old, right? Which is stupid to say when you think about most people live through to late 70s, 80s now, right? Life expectancy is probably better than it has been through history, especially in more developed countries, right? But the one thing that I've realized that comes with turning 30, and it is a bit of a superpower, I don't care no more. I don't care anymore. It's so much easier to just not care. I'm busy. I've got a lot of things to do. And that's the one thing that clicked into get at 30 for me, is I care more about me and the things I need to do and my time than I did mid-20s. Things have changed for me from 20 to 30, don't get me wrong, in the personal life and relationships and all sorts of things, right? But I don't care a lot about things that I used to anymore. And it means I live a lot happier.
So, alright. This is where I suppose I'm kind of looking at it from at the minute. Most people look at that as like a bookend to the decade or whatever else, but nothing actually substantial has changed in the last days, weeks, or whatever since you turned 30. But the way that you look at yourself has.
100%.
That's slowly been happening over time anyway. All throughout your 20s, you've been slowly feeling older and blah, 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 blah. But realistically, that's not that far into life. So let's say your first 10 years of life, you're an infant, for the lack of a better way of saying it. You really rely on your parents for everything.
If you're lucky enough, yeah, you totally rely on them.
Next 10 years, you're starting to find some level, and I specify some level of independence.
Definitely.
Your 20s to 30s, you should be solidifying that independence.
And I think most people do, but they're also your kind of screwy years. Most people would typically be transitioning out of education into work. Most people will probably be going in and out of relationships. Most people will be going into their first homes, whether it's renting or sort of flat sharing, or actually, no, you've got your stuff together and you're mortgaging or whatever, right? So they're the kind of things that change, but at the same time, you still go and get absolutely annihilated, or you go on the sesh. That's the 20s, right? And for me, as you said, what you said is true, right? You are getting older, so there is that bit in you that goes, I got to get things done, right? I've got to get more dependent on myself and get my own house, get my career, hit my ambitions, settle down, whatever. But for me, 30 is like the slap in the mouth. Because you realize the next decade milestone is 40. And you don't want to get to 40 without having everything together. Because I think that's when you would actually have that crisis of, I'm 40, what have I done? And that's how my head is, like when it settled in, that's how my head took it. Is that I've got 10 years to get things done. What do I want to do in these 10 years? Well, yeah, I would like the mortgage, or I would like my own home. Yes, I would like to develop my careers or build on my ambitions and actually try and actually hit them. Like, towards the end of it, I'd probably want to settle down and have a family. That's monumental shifts. You know what I mean? That's not going out and getting plastered anymore. That's not wasting time anymore. Time becomes a more valuable asset for me now. Because you understand that it's not infinite. In your 20s, you forget about that sometimes, man. You're just busy. You're just living. As soon as I turn 30, that morbid reality comes in where you're like, like the percentage of life lived is getting bigger. Percentage of life to live is starting to catch up.
So obviously, there's a few things there, but the main thing for me is like, I don't actually think it's that big of a milestone as people make out. Simply because, like I was saying before, your first 20 years of life, you're growing. You're literally becoming a person.
Yeah.
Those first 10 years, are they really growth years or whatever else? Or are they, you still kind of trying to solidify who the hell you are in life?
First 10 years are cognitive years. You spend most of those 10 years learning how to use your body, let alone who you are.
Are you talking from your 20s onwards or from 0 to 10?
0 to 10, that's what I thought you meant when you said first 10 years.
No, but...
Well, you mean 20 years from 10 to 30?
Yeah.
My bad. Then yeah, the 10 to 20, you're figuring out who you are and what you are, your personality and what you like and what you don't like, yeah.
So this is what I'm saying, is that realistically, I think the clock starts far later than what we, like the life clock, when you're talking about like life achievements, how far along. So straight away, the kind of avenue you went down there was mortgage, this like a very kind of achievement based. But then when you're starting on that road to achievement in your mid to late 20s, which most people are, because again, as you said, most people are partying, maybe have a gap year, enjoying a bit of life.
They're on the search.
Whatever it is they're doing, they're not focused on that kind of getting a solid footing or whatever else. They're kind of enjoying their bit of freedom, trying to discover who they are a little bit. So then how can we expect people by 30 to have it all together?
But that's my point.
Do you see where I'm coming from though?
Yeah, but that's my point. And that's why I think 30 is a big landmark. It's because it's when you realise that you don't have anything together. But you're running out of time to get it all together. So the next 10 years become the really important ones where you're like, I probably should start piecing some stuff together. Well, otherwise, what have I got? You know what I mean? Do you really want to be hitting 40 flat share with your mate? Even if you love him to death, probably not. You probably want your own plot in this world, or you probably want something that you've actually achieved and done. Do you still want to be entry level, or do you actually want to be climbing the ladder? Do you still want to be working for someone, or do you want to be doing your own thing? Put it in perspective. We both have a background as trainers, right? At 30, you stop developing new bone. So you're no longer generating bone. You're starting to die. That's the blunt truth of it. That starts at 30. So on average, that's probably what, just over a third of a lifespan now.
If
you're lucky, right? And that's why I said just over a third. So say that's like 33% maybe.
So the way that I'll kind of...
Assuming you live up to like 80, 85, right?
If I take my parents as an example, I really am about to hit midlife.
Boom.
But again, like, I don't have all that stigma or pressure. Like, again, I've been through, say, a few large life milestones to where the point where it's like, you think me passing through a day is a milestone? Like, for me, it's nothing but a turn in the page of the calendar. It's just another day. I've never seen people's age in that sense of that person's older, that person's younger, they're 56, da 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 da. For example, if you're in your 40s, yet you act like a child, I will treat you as such, regardless of your birth certificate.
Yeah.
If you're 19, but you act mature, you conduct yourself well, I will treat you with respect and accordingly. I will not treat you like a child.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always approached life like that. So I never have a kind of age bias. I never think that somebody older or younger is necessarily going to have more or less life experience than myself unless they've given me proof in either way.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I'm about to go through that kind of milestone, it's like, well, is it something that I should be a bit apprehensive about, a bit more serious about, or is the fact that I've been through so many major points already kind of nullify the fact that it's just a record. It's just a cool. John made it through another year. Beyond the grand scheme of things, that doesn't mean anything.
No, yeah, of course. I think the thing for me is, as much as, like I said, like, I feel like I unlocked that new superpower of just caring less, right? And the fact that life ambitions seem to hold a bit more gravitas. Doesn't necessarily mean that as soon as I turned 30, I was like, cool, let's go. No, it's just a natural process. It's not something that I think anyone should be apprehensive about. First things first, we're lucky we made it. We made it 30 years. Here's to another 30, right? Because I still got things I want to do in this life, whether that's serious stuff or actually just having a laugh, right? Not everyone gets to make it to 30.
I know the truth.
But I think that kind of what you were saying and what I'm saying matches up here, which is that things just naturally time themselves. They just naturally work. Most people's social circles will be a very similar age to what they are, right?
Yeah.
You may have the odd outlier that's actually a fair bit older, slightly younger.
Well, again, you got
But
young.
you'll be within kind of plus or minus 5, years of where you're at. Probably is the majority of your social circle, and most people will naturally be just doing their thing, and that's how it goes. You normally have the one outlier who's probably still losing their mind a little bit at 35, getting smashed up on a regular. Cool. They're the outliers. Most others are probably just doing very similar things, which is holding down their jobs or just going about their life and working on what they want to work on. So I don't think it's something to be apprehensive about. I think it's something to be welcomed. But it's a fresh decade.
When I say like most people are apprehensive, I think it's because there are so many things that you can get away with in your 20s that you wouldn't be able to get away with in your 30s. I.e., low-level jobs, living with parents, riding the bus. And I'm not throwing shade at anybody in any of those positions.
The bus one might not be that appropriate. I mean, if you live in a big city, it's probably an easier way to get about, if I'm honest. And that's coming from someone who drives.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. London life.
Big city life. It's probably easier.
It works. But then there's parts of this country that if you don't drive, you're not getting a bus. A bus comes every half an hour. Good luck.
A bus comes once a week, we chat about.
Exactly. So that plays a lot more into environment.
Yeah.
But that overall kind of preconception of like, oh, say he's 30 and he rides a bus and he lives at home with his mum and he works in Mackey's. You literally audibly groaned at that. Like,
anyone got any nuggets? Give me some nuggets.
You know he's one of those guys that act like the sauces come out of his paycheck as well.
No. Give me all the sauce, man. Give me all this house, bro. Sweet curry and barbecue.
But straight away now, if that was somebody that was 29 opposed to 31, very little difference in years. But the idea in people's mind would be totally different because you're not in your 20s no more, you're in your 30s, buck your ideas up. But like I was saying earlier, realistically, they're just out of that first 10 years of you're now an adult, you've stopped growing. And to build on to your point, now your bones are dying.
Literally. Look it up. Osteoclasts and blasts. Look out.
So there's so many kind of like preconceived ideas that once you get over that milestone, you should have X, Y, or Z. Again, if you say to most people that you don't have kids in your 20s, fairly acceptable. In
Yeah,
your
more
30s,
and more acceptable now.
yeah, I suppose so.
Well, just the way science is going and careers are going, more people will probably be having kids later in life now. You're looking at all of them.
But that literally gets into my point. 30s, slightly less acceptable. 40s, oh, it might be a bit late for you to start thinking about that. It's that teeter-totter of, it's a very fine line where those generations are slipping from, it's taking longer for people to find their feet in life, and then they're starting off building that life further back. But the ideas haven't changed. We still think that, like, look at in the UK, a couple of years ago, they changed the schooling laws so that you have to stay in education until you're 18.
Yeah.
That's 2 more years out of work that people now have. People talk to your parents or your grandparents and they talk about having a paper round or jobs when they was a teenager. The likelihood of that happening now, that will have a completely different life set up from the get-go. The responsibilities that you learn and everything else that would set you up from a teenager to have far more adult responsibilities going forward. So you wouldn't be starting at 0 in your 20s. You'd be starting, say, at like 6 because you've been managing your paper round wages since you was 14.
Yeah.
You've been paying your bills and paying your mum a little bit of rent or whatever. Like, you'd have had those responsibilities to build up those life lessons that would set you up for good habits later in life. So then when you got to your 30s, you can have that mortgage and this, that and everything else. But nowadays, people are learning those lessons far later, if at all.
Yeah, but it's also coupled with the way that economies and pricing in general is. Yeah, again, really specific to big cities, but it's getting worse everywhere anyways. Prices of things like mortgages and stuff like that are now at a point where they feel unattainable. Unless you just kind of have that kind of money and you've had it for a long time, or like you said, you started that young to actually compound it. And that's a whole different caveat. But the one thing that's just come to my head, right, is obviously the decades are just 0 to 10, 10 to 20, right? But if you look at how timings work, I reckon that you feel closer to switching the decades a couple of years before the actual decade starts. So in a sense of 18 to 28 would be a better grouping for that decade. And then 28 into 30. Because chances are you're already thinking and feeling like you're in the 30s before you're there. Because those high 20s is when you start kind of maturing a bit more and you start coming out of that. Not everyone's the same, right? But if you're speaking on a general consensus, right? The top end of the 20s is where you're going, these hangovers last a little longer than a day now. You know what I mean? And if you do get a bit mad with it and a bit carried away with it, you start waking up and getting a bit more like, oof, I can't keep doing this because I'm wasting time. Or, you know what I mean? I'm borrowing 3 days out of my week instead of being productive for 3 days out of my week. And then you start paying more attention to how people around you are acting. And you're like, well, do I want to be in this circle? Do I want to be with people who are moving? That to me feels like a more, especially for me anyways, a better grouping of ages. You know what I mean? I didn't get to 30 and magically, as I said, wake up and go, different decade, let's roll. Like, I was kind of already putting the wheels in motion to set myself forward. So,
but this is the thing. It's like you said. It's because it's that round number. It is that bookend. Do you know what I mean? But that bookend hasn't moved with the times. So now there are going to be certain connotations or certain like preconceived notions that people have of people in their 30s, of turning 30, of all of the things that kind of relate to that some are going to be valid and some ain't. Like, there are going to be some aspects of turning 30 that just ain't going to resonate with some people at all. They're not going to apply to their life in any sense of the words or whatever else. It's just going to completely miss it. But then there's going to be other people that experience every single side of turning 30.
100%.
Where it's like they'll go through every part of the feeling older or every part of whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
But it's an individual experience that everybody kind of goes through, yet everybody will have their own idea of. So like, I never used to be able to picture myself, and I still can't. Like, try picture yourself as an old man. You can't do it.
I'm already there, man. If this chair was rocking, I'd have a pipe. Man.
I mean, bro, if my back pain was to go for it, I've been an old man since I was 3. But, like, it's hard to imagine yourself any different than you are at the moment.
Oh, 100%.
So to try to imagine yourself at the age of 40, you're not going to be able to do it.
Bald, long beard.
But again, you might not. You might end up with the friggin' Monty Burns and have all around the sides.
I figure what's more appropriate is I go and get myself a Turkish hair implant.
I mean, I heard about a flight to Turkey for like 29 quid the other day.
Boom. It's all included in the 5k for that.
That was only one way, to be fair.
Time I walk back, I'll have a full head of hair and a mullet.
But the other thing, that is a problem of turning 30 though. Like, losing your hair and blah, like, what's wrong with that though?
There's nothing wrong with it necessarily, man. That's just down to how you feel. Like, as someone who is losing their hair, again, that falls into the I don't care bracket, realistically. I make jokes about it.
But that's been happening long before you turned 30.
Yeah, but again, but this is why like the whole 30 thing doesn't necessarily, the bookends don't necessarily work, because it was a couple of years ago where I stopped caring about it, you know what I mean?
But
it's inevitable. You can't fight the inevitable.
But I'm pretty sure since I met you, your hair's been running away from your face.
Yeah, very slowly it has been going, yeah.
Like,
but now it's running away from my head as well, so.
burning that candle at both ends.
Yeah, good thing about being 6 foot is not everyone gets to see that. Surprise.
I mean, until you got to tie your shoelace.
Why do you think I started wearing baseball caps then? I mean,
just see David baseball caps and slip-ons, just like, shut up.
I mean, I'm just trucker lifestyle, man.
But, like, there are so many kind of preconceived notions of turning 30 that I think haven't shifted with the times.
100%.
Like,
there's also different context on it. Would I feel the same at turning 30 if I was in a committed relationship? Or would I feel different if I ended it fully single? Because they're two completely different feelings. As it happened with me, I was in a relationship when I turned 30 and I came out of it not long into turning 30. That probably had a large effect on why my mindset changed. But that will have a different effect on people as well. And the length of time they've been in a relationship while they've been single, what they're looking for. Because in some people, it's just going to manifest, especially if they're single. They're going to feel it more and more. They want someone, or they want someone to live with and to enjoy a life with. Whereas if they're with someone, there's a high chance that they're like, no, I'm good. But there could also be that small chance where they go, do I want to be with this person in my 30s? Because it gets real serious in my 30s. And we're talking mortgages and families, and I'm not sure about this anymore.
I mean, I suppose I'm the polar opposite in that sense of like never having a serious relationship.
In my 20s, I just wanted to be left alone. In my 30s, I still want to be left alone. In my 40s, I still want to be left alone, but I want to farm. So you can't imagine yourself being
dogs go to die.
Straw hat, dungarees, still being left alone. Sounds good, actually. I'm not gonna lie.
Bro, I'm so set in my ways already, just as like an old man. Yeah,
off my lord.
Old man John just
me and my dog and my shotgun.
Yeah. Got off topic there.
I'm just saying, when you turn 30, you start picturing things more, you know?
I suppose you start taking life a little bit more seriously and...
You know what I think a nice way that I could put it myself is, I think you start understanding the consequences of things more. And they become a lot more prevalent in your mind before you commit to things. So you become, like, I've become a lot more aware of what I do and what that creates and how that creates. So again, a night out is a prime example, right? I do like me a night out. But I also understand the consequences of going out now. I understand the financial strain that can have, the knock-on effect it has on my week, my mental health. Because boy, if I'm hanging, it ain't good. And if you went too hard, it ain't good. If you done whatever, there's some things that you're like, oh, I didn't. I should have done that.
This is kind of
you know what I mean? How you speak to people becomes a lot more prevalent in your head. How you actually conduct yourself around people, the signals you give out become a lot more prevalent, because the one thing I respect now more than most things is my time. And I don't like it being wasted. So for me to try and kind of defend my time, I have to give out the right signals to things. Because especially like if it's like I've known you a long time, I know I'm not wasting my time. But when it comes to meeting people, I kind of feel like I have to give out a certain vibe that I'm not here to waste my time or my energy, because that's also bloody valuable. You know? Because as soon as you give out those kind of mixed signals and people get the wrong ideas, all of a sudden you've just wasted a really long time.
But then the thing is, like, I suppose before you kind of get that far into life, you don't have the confidence to kind of assert that, like, this is my boundary line, do not cross it, da 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 da. Like, again, like, busy. I think there's so many instances in life where it's a idea where you have that pre-kept idea where it's... Oh, I've fully lost my train of thought. You have that pre-kept idea of like... Oh, I've lost that train of thought. Pick it up, bro.
Well, you do. You get more confident. And the thing about confidence that I found from my own experience is linking everything together, right?
That's where I was going with it. So you get far more life experience to the point where like you learn where it's like, if I tell this person I don't like them, it's not the end of the world.
Correct.
I don't have to deal with them anymore. Like, it might be an uncomfortable moment, but it's done. So like, you have more experiences where you learn to exert your dominance.
Absolutely.
And where it's just like, do you know what? This is my life, and I'm going to draw the line in the sand where I'm going to go.
Absolutely.
And you get far more willing to do that.
Yeah.
But again, it's you have to go through that cycle X amount of times before it's like, dum-dum, listen.
But I think that kind of beautifully sums up for most people's 20s. Definitely mine. Especially the latter part of my 20s. Most of my 20s was in a relationship, came out of it, bundle of flames. Boy, did I have to burn to learn all those lessons. And now that I've turned 30, those lessons, they're just there. So anytime you see something that reminds you or thinks, oh, we've gone down this road before, and we know how that I'm not doing it. Like, you become, confidence is probably the right word. But you know that your boundaries are actually really important. Because your resources that you carry yourself are now so important to you because you understand they're finite. Not only is life finite, right? Mortality is real. Memento mori. Death is inevitable. You don't know when, but it's coming for every single one of us, right? But at the same time, you put a lot more value on you and what is actually really important to you, right? And like for me now, as I said, after turning 30, and again, this didn't happen like as soon as the clock struck midnight. It's like, hey, you're 30. Took a couple months. And another breakup for me, but unfortunately, right? It will come in waves. But what do you actually value now? Do you value going out every weekend, trying to meet new people and just wasting your damn time? Or do you value what you already have? Because most people have a very established social circle at this point in life. So do you actually value spending time with those people who have got you and understand you and respect what you stand for so that you don't have to set those boundaries because they're already there? For me, I value my time. I value my energy. They're both very finite resources. You don't get time back. And there's only so much energy I can give you before I have to recharge. The lower my energy gets, the harsher I'm going to get because I've stopped caring. I'm tired. I also value my happiness because that's a finite resource too. And again, like my energy, it needs to be recharged sometimes. If you have a really negative amount of people or things in your life, it's going to drain that resource. How do you get it back? You see what I mean? So the benchmarks, the boundaries, they all become so much more important. And I think that's a big thing that characterizes turning 30 for me. Is I understand the importance of me and things more so than trying to run around and do all sorts of stupid stuff. I've learned the lessons. I've served my 20s. Now it's time to use the lessons.
So, through that, and I don't know why the lights cut out, but...
Told you, I stopped caring!
there's a few things there. Like, there's two major things that I kind of want to touch on before we go into another like little ranty rant. The first is like, I think a lot of these kind of big milestones I kind of went through when I became a dad. Like, I think you...
Everything's falling apart over here. You keep going, mate. I'm just double checking the reinforcements of the chair I'm going for, mate.
Oh, sweet Jesus. The Lord have mercy. But like, so when I became a dad, you witnessed firsthand my mentality towards my time. I know, right?
Oh.
My mentality towards my time changed. Like, a lot of the kind of changes that you were talking about, like I got a lot more serious about certain kind of aspects of life, and
100%.
kind of a lot of the kind of a lot of life become a lot more serious because I had somebody more dependent on myself.
Yeah.
Whereas it sounds like the kind of change that you went through that turning 30 stages, you kind of took your own life more seriously.
You gained a dependent, I lost one. Think about a relationship, right? You're not solely dependent on each other because you're adults. But there is still someone who is somewhat dependent on you as a source of happiness or a source of experience, memories, whatever it is, right?
Mm.
Once that's gone, what are you serving? You. Nothing else. There's nothing else there's no one else to please.
Mm.
You know what I mean? That's a very kind of broad stroke for the definition of a relationship, and it's not the be all and end all. So don't take it exactly like for like. But you're putting in something into a relationship to build something better, right?
Mm.
Once that's gone, it is just you. You are the only person dependent on you. Whereas you gain the dependent. There's someone there. It's a non-negotiable. They don't know any different because they can't know any different. They depend on you for survival. So your perspective in life is going to change like that. That's what I saw from you anyways as the outside looking in.
So what I'll challenge about that is obviously like, yeah, I can see how being in a relationship you can kind of see them as your dependent, but at the same time, you would depend on them as much as they depend on you. It's like we've spoken about many times before in personal conversations, like it's a ever shifting scale.
Which reaffirms that whole dependency thing. You know what I mean? But you realize that there isn't someone you can go to make you happy. It's just you now.
Mm.
So you have to be more in control of what you do. You have to be in control of your mindset.
Mm.
There's days where your friends aren't going to be available.
Trust.
Right? No matter how much they say they will be there whenever, and they mean it, but things happen. I've done it. Everyone's done it.
Mm.
So what are you going to do? You're going to go depend on yourself. That's life. You keep it rolling. You have, like, even if it's just keeping yourself going long enough until that friend answers the phone and then you can bounce off them, right? There's still a period that you have to depend on yourself and keep it moving.
Mm. But this is the thing though, like there's so many kind of connotations and like aspects that kind of throw life through a whim or through a whirl or whatever else, where it's just like you're trying to do something and you'll completely get thrown through a loop. You'll have an idea of the trajectory. Look at like back when we worked security and everything else. It was like, cool, the next 5 to 10 years are security. The next 5 to 10 years was not security. They was far from it. But you paint that whole picture from that moment that you're in.
Mm.
So like when you're looking at that in terms of life and like your 30s and everything else, like you were saying, you kind of, where you're looking to paint that picture forward of, it shouldn't really start from when you're 30. It should maybe start from when you're 28 or when you're starting to think about, okay, this chapter of life is coming to an end. The next chapter is about to start. Do you know what I mean? Like, so there's so many aspects where it's like you should kind of play a little bit beforehand opposed to behind.
Mm.
But anyway, we've got enough tangents. There was one more thing that I was going to talk about. So do you see how we were saying about like where life starts, this, that, and everything else?
Mm-hmm.
And I use that kind of job analogy from like the paper round or whatever. I've got I suppose I could use like little work projects that I started when I was a teenager or whatever else to paint a similar story, but one that's probably more appropriate and more entertaining is the fact that obviously I do not advise this, I started drinking at like 13, 14 years old. So by the time I could legally go into pubs at 18, there was no fun in it. Like, I was allowed to do it now. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I stopped, like, going out drinking.
Yeah.
By the time I was, like, 21, 22, I really had no interest in going out drinking. Because now you're letting me do it. It's not as fun. Like, I got so much of that out of my system that by the time I entered my early 20s, I was willing to focus on life a little bit more seriously. I was willing to work God knows how many hours in security and everything else. So that kind of partying aspect of my end of like teenage years or early 20s or whatever else really kind of started in my early teen years. Do you know what I mean? So if I'd have started, say I started drinking at 13, 14 and then by 18, say that's 5 years. If you used to roll that forward from 18, that 5 years of drinking, I wouldn't have even started coming out of that phase until I was like 23.
True.
So that I was 2 years into security by that point. And security and partying lifestyle do not go hand in hand.
Oh, hell no.
So just seeing where you start that journey and like what lessons you learn along the way can really adjust like just your own experience and your own kind of like way of learning and shit and how far into things you get.
Very true. Very, very true. What's your seed for the people this episode, John?
Seed is going to be, don't focus on age so much. There's going to be things that you can learn from people older and younger than yourself. So try not to let a number discredit somebody's advice, wherever it's coming from. Take it for what it is, not for who it's coming from. Have you got one for the people?
Embrace it. Be blessed that you turned whatever age you're turning. And treat it as another year. Treat it as another day. You still got stuff to do. Go do it.
Fair. All the best, and we'll catch you on the next one.